A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up in the half hour. The UK summons the Russian ambassador over strikes in Ukraine that killed at least 17 people overnight. While the rest of Europe responds with threats of sanctions, US President Donald Trump once again questions previous President Joe Biden's role in the conflict. Widespread destruction and casualties recorded in Sudan. The UK Foreign Office has summoned Russia's ambassador after strikes on Kyiv killed at least 17 people, including 4 children. Dozens more were injured in the overnight strikes, which also damaged British Council and EU mission buildings. One guard working at the British Council's office in Kyiv was injured in the attack. Meanwhile, the Russian ambassador to the UK has arrived at the Foreign Office in London. The Russian Ministry of Defense says Russian forces struck military targets in the Sumy, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, in Kherson, and in Kharkiv regions. Now, aiming the targets were ammunition depots and unmanned aerial vehicles, as well as temporary deployment points of Ukraine armed forces. The ministry says that it hit a medium reconnaissance ship in the Danube River, and its air defenses shot down aircraft, aerial bombs, rocket projectiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles as well. While the Kremlin says it is still interested in pursuing peace talks on Ukraine despite last night's attacks on Kyiv, government spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, speaking to reporters today, says Russia is not the only one at fault here, as Ukraine is also attacking Russia. According to him, the special military operation continues. You can see that strikes on Russian infrastructure, often on Russian civilian infrastructure, by the Kyiv regime are also continuing. The Russian armed forces are also carrying out their tasks, according to Dmitry Peskov. He says Russia is successfully hitting military and military-related infrastructure. He's also doubled down on Russia not deliberately targeting civilians and directs its attacks only against military objects. Russian and Ukrainian officials say scores of civilians have died in recent months during Russian strikes on densely populated areas, and thousands since the start of the war. More reactions now from Europe to the recent attacks by Russia on Ukraine. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer wrote on social media earlier today, Putin is killing children and civilians and sabotaging hopes of peace. This bloodshed must end. The German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that Russia showed its true face again last night. But the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says she's spoken to the presidents of Russia and Ukraine over the strikes on Kyiv. She also affirmed the EU will deal its 18th round of sanctions on Moscow in response.
I'm outraged by the attack on Kyiv, also hitting our EU offices. This was the deadliest drone and missile attack on the capital since July. And as you can see behind me on the screen, it was an attack also on our delegation. I just spoke with our deputy ambassador, and I'm relieved that none of our staff were harmed. Last night's attack struck in close proximity of the diplomatic mission, the representation of our union. 2 missiles hit in a distance of 50 meters of the delegation within 20 seconds. And this is another grim reminder of what is at stake. It shows that the Kremlin will stop at nothing to terrorize Ukraine, blindly killing civilians, men, women, and children, and even targeting the European Union. This is why we are keeping maximum pressure on Russia. That means tightening our sanctions regime. We will come forward soon with our 19th package of hard-biting sanctions. And in parallel, we are advancing the work on the Russian frozen assets to contribute to Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. And of course, we are ensuring strong, unwavering support to Ukraine, our neighbor, partner, friend, and our future member. Tomorrow I will travel to the 7 member states that are strengthening and protecting our external borders with Russia and Belarus. I want to express the EU's full solidarity with them and share the progress we are making in building a strong European defence industry, especially through our joint defence instrument, SAFE. And finally, I want to thank our brave staff in the EU delegation in Ukraine. They are doing outstanding work under extremely difficult conditions. I will deliver this message to them in person when I next go to Kyiv.
EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Well, it was just a couple of days ago the U.S. President Donald Trump criticized both his predecessor, Joe Biden, and Ukraine for thinking, in his words, that they could win a conflict with a country 15 times their size, as he answered questions at the end of a lengthy cabinet meeting in D.C.
The one that I thought would be the easiest is turning out to be the hardest. That's President Putin and President Zelensky, but I think I'll get it done. War's very tricky, very horrible, but with war, you never know. Things change. People go into war, think they're going to win the war, and then they get their asses kicked, and they lose their country, and they lose millions of lives. Nobody goes into a war thinking they're going to lose. They go in. I'm sure that Ukraine thought they were going to win. It's going to be, we're going to win. You're going to beat somebody that's 15 times your size. Biden shouldn't have let that happen. Biden shouldn't have, I mean, the man was grossly incompetent. He should have never been there. That would have never happened. But you don't go into a war that's 15 times your size.
U.S. President Donald Trump becomes, as the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced on Wednesday, the country has appointed Olga Stefanishyna as ambassador to Washington. During his regular nightly address, Zelensky said he had signed a decree on Stefanishya's appointment, outlining the key tasks to update the world of the Ukrainian embassy and to fully implement all agreements with Washington. Stefanishyna, who previously served as Ukraine's Vice Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration, has been acting as a special presidential envoy to develop cooperation with the United States since mid-July, following a series of government reshuffles. A remark by the U.S. envoy to Syria and Lebanon, Tom Barak, has drawn sharp condemnation from Lebanese media after he described journalist behavior as animalistic during a press conference at Badba Palace on Tuesday. Speaking on Wednesday, journalist Venus Ferrat said she considered the word used by Tom Barak a direct insult, noting that at the time she did not hear the comments as the room was too noisy. She was only made aware via a breaking news alert on her phone. Calls for an official apology followed by the outburst by Barak, where he told journalists to be quiet for a moment, adding, "The moment this turns into chaos, like some kind of animalistic behavior, will leave. So if you want to know what's going on, behave with civility, behave kindly, behave with tolerance, because this is the problem in the region." His words. And in response, the Lebanese presidency issued an official statement that it reaffirms its absolute respect for human dignity in general and reiterated its appreciation for all journalists and accredited media representatives in particular. However, President of the Union of Journalists in Lebanon, LC Mufaraj, says journalists were disappointed that the response did not meet expectations and that this may be due to fear of a U.S. reaction towards Lebanon, particularly given the current circumstances. In the meantime, the Nigerian Guild of Editors has expressed a deep concern over the relentless targeting and killing of journalists in Gaza. In a statement released today, the group condemned Israeli attacks that took the lives of journalists from Reuters, the Associated Press, Al Jazeera, and Middle East Eye, describing the attack as a blatant breach of international law, specifically the Geneva Conventions and Additional Protocol 1, which provide for the protection of journalists covering wars. It said targeting and killing journalists in Gaza constitutes a war crime and an unacceptable attempt to impede the work of journalists and conceal the truth from war areas. It calls for thorough investigations into the incident and for those responsible to be held accountable. Heavy rains in the village of Al Shadnanab in Sudan's Nile River State has caused widespread destruction and casualties. Residents were seen on Wednesday wading through flooded streets, as well as damaged and collapsed houses and debris which scattered across the area. The Sudanese Doctors Committee reported the floods and heavy rains in Nile River State damaged 154 homes, displaced 1,078 people. There are also reports that large tracts of Khartoum, Red Sea, Sennar, Darfur and parts of the northern state also experienced heavy rains and floods which led to power outages. At least 8 people are confirmed dead. The Minister of Infrastructure and Urban Development and Chairman of the Supreme Committee for Autumn Services, Abdelgader Zain, has appealed to the localities to direct residents to evacuate from the areas to higher ground until the end of the autumn season. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu arrived in Abuja following his state visit to Brazil before he left the South African nation. He met with a cross-section of Nigerians resident in Brazil. The event was put together by the chairman, CEO of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Dr. Abike Dabiri Erewa. In attendance were the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Deputy Senate President, the governors of Kaduna and Kano states, the Minister of Information, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, and the Minister of Science and Technology, among others. And one of the outcomes of the President's visit to Brazil is the agreement between the two countries for direct flights between Nigeria and Brazil.
Ministers and top government officials who accompanied President Bola Tinubu to Brazil on his 3-day visit arrived at Murtala Mohammed International Airport on the flights between Nigeria and Brazil, courtesy of Air Peace.
Let's wait for the Minister of Aviation.
The visit, according to the Minister of Information and National Orientation, is geared towards boosting bilateral relations, enhancing trade partnerships, and fostering cooperation in areas such as agriculture, energy security, as well as technology.
We have just landed on the first maiden flight between Brazil and Lagos. As you know, Mr. President was in Brazil, and he made a commitment together with President Lula da Silva of Brazil to have direct flight connection between Nigeria and Brazil. In that agreement, Air Peace was designated as one of the carriers that has been approved to undertake this kind of shuttle. And then there's also Caverton, I think, for cargo. So we all decided to join, courtesy of the chairman of Air Peace. He took us gratis, all from Brazil here to Lagos. This is part of the fulfillment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed agenda, opening up Nigeria, opening up the world to Nigeria.
Members of the Nigerian delegation include the Minister of Trade, Foreign Affairs, Aviation and Aerospace Development, amongst others.
Brazil is the biggest economy in South America, and of course, Nigeria is considered the biggest economy in Africa. So connecting these two economies was very key to both presidents. The trade between both countries plummeted from $10 billion to $2 billion. And that is how, in 10 years, and that was how the things got sour. But with this, of course, relations will pick up again. And key to this, key to the achievement of all the agreements we signed is the connectivity between both countries.
Several agreements were signed during the visit, including framework for joint ventures in renewable energy and agricultural development, as well as knowledge-sharing initiatives in technology and infrastructure. And the chairman of Air Peace believes the flight connection between Nigeria and South America will be very crucial in achieving the set objectives outlined by both nations.
Connectivity is the key to everything signed. Our dear president signed several MOUs with Brazil. He has just opened this country for the youth of this country. He's creating a Nigeria for the future of everyone. And you might not know the opportunities that are embedded in all the MOUs signed until they start being implemented. It's huge. But what we did today is symbolic and at the same time real.
This historic flight marks a significant step towards deepening Nigeria's global partnerships and driving sustainable economic growth, as Nigerians are hopeful to feel and see the impact of the agreement signed in Brazil.
Earlier this week, we reported that South Korea had approved a bill banning the use of phones and smart devices for students during school hours. It comes into effect next year. And they're not the only ones revising use of mobile phones in schools. Germany has also tightened rules on smartphone use in schools, with several regions introducing or planning bans on private mobile phone usage. For more on this now, let's cross to Thomas Sparrow, a correspondent with our partners, the Deutsche Welle. Thomas, great to see you. Could you give us an overview of what the new regulations mean?
Education here in Germany is not a matter for the federal government, so for the government here in Berlin, but it is a matter for each one of Germany's 16 regions. That's because of Germany's federal system, and as such, there are different measures in place if you look at different parts of the country. What has changed specifically now in the beginning of this school year is that several of those regions have tightened their regulations when it comes to smartphone use in schools, and several of those regions have actually now announced that they're banning the use of smartphones in schools, especially for the younger pupils, so for those in elementary or primary schools. Other regions, meanwhile, have stressed that that is not necessarily the right way forward, and they're leaving that decision in the hands of the specific schools. Those who have argued for a ban have stressed that it's important not only to increase students' concentration and improve also the grades. That's based on certain studies that have said that reducing the use of smartphones actually increases the likelihood that students can actually get better grades. And they're also analyzing and saying that an important argument here is that it can help protect children, for example, when it comes to cyberbullying. This is only one part of the debate. The debate here in Germany and also in other parts of the continent is about social media use as well. So there are many different views when it comes to what's the best way forward when it comes to smartphone use in schools.
Yes, so many things. But some organizations are very critical of any move towards a ban. Why?
Indeed, that's the case, because they say that banning is not the best way forward, that it doesn't take into account the fact that young children, also teenagers, actually use smartphones on their day-to-day lives. So the focus should not be on banning smartphone use, but actually helping pupils to use them appropriately, to use them responsibly. So what these organizations are actually calling for is for an increase in media literacy in schools from a very young age. And that also includes social media use in schools from a very young age. What are the risks? What are the benefits? How can young pupils actually deal with these kinds of challenges in a better way? So what the organizations are stressing is that from a regional perspective in Germany, but also from a national perspective in Germany, there should be an increased focus on media literacy in schools instead of banning smartphones as a measure, because they believe that in any case, pupils will use smartphones as soon as they leave actually the school every day. So the focus should be on responsible use instead.
So this is just Germany, right? Thomas, how do other European countries view this topic?
Indeed, this is a topic that is not only discussed here in Germany. It's an important issue that is also discussed widely in other parts of Europe, and countries like France or the Netherlands, other European countries as well, have already announced their measures to protect children, their measures to deal with smartphone use and social media use in schools. But there are also calls for the European Union to actually tighten some of its laws that already include some elements in order to better protect children and better guide children as well when it comes to the use of smartphones and social media. And in fact, the European Commission very recently published its guidance on child protection. So what this actually reveals is that this important topic is not only one that is discussed at a regional or at a national level, but one that is also taken very seriously from European Union authorities as well.
Thomas, thanks again for joining us. Now, it's that time of the year again in Spain when the city of Brunol in Valencia holds another edition of La Tomatina, when participants throw tomatoes at each other, said to be the biggest food fight in the world. This was Wednesday's edition, the 78th so far. Trucks unloaded around 120,000 kilograms of Pierre-style tomatoes as participants stomped at them and then hurled them into the crowd, leaving the narrow streets carpeted with tomatoes. It looks like fun, but a lot of laundry to be done. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.